Hello there, this is Bobby aka Paginator, and I'm here today to tell you about my Alphabet Soup Reading Challenge. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you may have heard me mention that I am a school teacher. I teach middle school reading and a couple of other subjects as well, and I like to have big reading challenges for my semester reading goals so that I can show my students that I'm reading a lot and a wide variety of things. And so this is my first semester reading goal, which I just finished the other day. I chose to do the Alphabet Soup Reading Challenge, and I will put a link to the website where I found this in the space down below. So in this video, I'm just going to quickly walk through each of the books and say a little bit about each one, and I'm not going to do a full review of each one. I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. Hopefully I can remember all of them, and here we go. So for the letter A, I chose All the Crooked Saints. Now I should, as I'm getting into this first book, tell you how the challenge works is that the title of the book has to have a word that begins with that letter, and it can't be little words like an or that kind of thing, or of, etc. You know what I mean. Okay, so All the Crooked Saints is by Maggie Stiefvater. This is her brand new book, and what I can tell you is the story's weird, and I feel good about saying that because Maggie said that herself. I got to hear her speak when I got my copy of this book and got it autographed, and it is a weird story. It's about people who have a miracle performed on them, and they actually change physical shape as they're working through their own inner demons to try to overcome their miracle. As with all of Maggie Stiefvater's books, the writing is absolutely gorgeous and well worth your time to read, and a great sense of humor. For the letter B, I have the book So Be It, and this is by Sarah Weeks. And to be honest, this was one of the earliest ones that I read, so I'm having trouble remembering all of the details, but it is a middle grade novel about friendships, and actually that's all I better say because the details that I'm remembering are spoiler details. So, middle school friendship. Alright, for C, I read The Face on the Milk Carton, or listened to it rather, on audio, and a lot of people know this book. It's been around for years and years and years, but if you don't know the story, we meet Janie, who discovers that she is one of those missing kids on the milk carton, and she actually wasn't born to the parents that she lives with and that she calls mom and dad, and there's a lot more to the story in what she finds out, and she has to make a decision whether to contact her birth family or the hotline for missing children, or whether to just leave it be because she really does love her parents. For the letter D, I read And I Darken, which is kind of a feminist retelling of Dracula's story. We actually have his daughter as the main character, and she's the one who becomes very violent and that. And there is a sequel that's out now, and I haven't read that one yet. The author is Kiersten White, and to be honest, I am not sure how I feel about this book. I was kind of either in a really bad mood when I read it, or just kind of, I don't know, I can't make myself love it. The cover is gorgeous, and it's a great idea for a story, but I found my eyes just moving over the page and not being totally engaged in the story. If you disagree, that's fine. You're welcome to your own opinions. If you're going to make a comment about it, though, keep it positive because this is a space for people to just share their opinions about reading without feeling like they're being attacked. For the letter E, I read Eliza and Her Monsters, and this is by Francesca Zappia. And this book I devoured in one day. I love it so much. It just makes me smile even thinking about it. And I've book tucked it to my class twice now because I loved it so much. This is about a girl named Eliza who is the anonymous creator of a wildly popular webcomic called Monstrous Sea. And the only people that really know she's the one that creates it are her parents. They know she makes a comic, her little brother, and two friends of hers that help her manage the content online. No one else knows. And this new boy comes to her school, and he's a fan, and she really wants to tell him, and he's really like that boy that's going to bring her out of her shell a little bit and not live so much online. But she's scared to death, and what happens when her secret is revealed? Read the book to find out. Alright, Fallen is by Lauren Kate, and this is one of those books that's been out there for quite a while. It is like a paranormal romance, fallen angels kind of a relationship, where we have a girl who falls in love with the dark, mysterious guy that turns out to be fallen angel. If this sounds familiar, maybe it's because it's happened in about 73,000 books. So Fallen is just one of those. I am not a super great fan of fallen angel stories, so I didn't love this one, but a decent story. All right, for the letter G, I have The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and this was a funny book. Now, it is not going in my classroom library because of some appropriateness issues. For 7th graders, especially in the place where I live, they're not going to be quite ready for this because there is some gay relationships, and I'm not bashing gay relationships at any point. I'm just saying my little middle schoolers aren't ready for that. But super funny book, and the author has a great sense of humor. You can find videos of her online talking about her book and how she's excited to have it published and everything. And it's basically two young men who are very wealthy in the 1800s. Am I right about that? I think so. And they're going on their grand tour of Europe and some of the experiences and troubles they get themselves into while they're there. For the letter H, I read Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I was rereading by audiobook all of the Harry Potter series starting in the summertime and having to wrap up during the school year in the first of semester one. And Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, if you haven't read Harry Potter, what are you doing with your life? Seriously, look at me. If you haven't read Harry Potter yet, you need to go read it right now. That's all I'm going to say. Because if you haven't read the beginning of the series, I don't want to spoil anything by telling you about this book because it is number 7. And if you... Yeah, I better not say anymore because I don't want to spoil for anyone who hasn't read it yet. And those of you that have, you're probably diehard fans like me that know the story really well. All right, for the letter I read Before She Ignites by Jodi Meadows. This is a really cool story. I got this in my Owl Crate a few months ago, and 2 or 3 months ago. Anyway, this is about our main character who has a dragon, kind of like a pet dragon that stays at the Dragon Sanctuary. But in this kingdom where there are different islands, sorry, I keep hitting myself with the poster. There are starting to be more and more regulations about how you can use dragons, and there are some people that want to get rid of them completely. This young lady speaks out about something that she probably shouldn't have, considering the government that she is involved in. She's supposed to be the example for everyone of this treaty that they had, and she opens her mouth about something that she sees as an injustice and ends up being locked up. And I better not say any more about that. All right, for the letter J, I read Just Ella by Margaret Peterson Haddix, and this is just a fun spin on the Cinderella tale. There's so many different spin-offs of Cinderella. This is just one of them. I really like this one better than like Ella Enchanted. They both came out in the same general time period. I'm thinking maybe the same year-ish. But I do like this one better than Ella Enchanted just because it's less of the funny, quirky stuff like Ella Enchanted, but this is more of an actual relationship, and it talks about, well, what if Cinderella and the prince don't really get along all that much, and what if they're not meant to be? All right, for the letter K, I read An Abundance of Catherines by John Green. Yeah, I know, it's been out for a while, and I hadn't read it yet, but the point is I've read it now, and it is a wonderful story. If you don't know, this is about a young man who only dates girls named Catherine, and he's really obsessed with this one that recently broke up with him, Catherine the 19th, and he and his friend decide to go on this little road trip, and if they decide to stop somewhere, they do. If they decide to turn this way or that way, whatever, they're just going to go where the road takes them. And they end up in this little tiny town called Gutshot, and they meet a girl who's not named Catherine, and they kind of get adopted by she and her mother and come up with this little job for a while and learn some things about themselves, and maybe he can let go of the Catherine thing by the end of the book. Or maybe not. All right, for the letter L, I read A Little in Love, and I've read this one and listened to the audiobook, and I equally enjoyed both. If you are a fan of Les Miserables, think about the character Eponine. This poor girl is totally in love with Marius, and he just ditches her for Cosette. And in the book, she says to Marius, I think I was a little in love with you. Well, in this book, this is her story. Where am I pointing here? And we totally hear the story of her life from her point of view, and we get to know how much she really does love Marius. She loves him more than we realize when we read Les Mis or when we watch the movie or the musical. Very, very interesting story. Eponine's one of my favorite characters from Les Mis, and if I could ever be in a musical, I'd want to play her in that. Not that I would be good enough for a musical, but beside the point. Bottom line is, I like that character. Okay, my arms are getting tired from this poster. Okay, letter M, Moxie. This book is so much fun. If I taught high school, I would have this in my classroom library, but I have middle schoolers, and I kept it out just because some of the things that are on the guys' shirts in this school. The school where this takes place is very misogynistic. Girls don't have a lot of power, and when something goes wrong, let's say a boy like misuses his power over a girl, I guess, when he's assaulting her in some way or something, it's pretty much the girl's fault, is the viewpoint of the school. And so our main character discovers that her mom used to be in a girl power band, and she decides that she's going to start a newsletter, which she calls a zine, called Moxie, and she's going to create social change in her school. And it is such a fun read, and the dedication is super awesome. She dedicated it to Jennifer Matthews, the author, excuse me. She dedicated it to a teacher who once called her a feminazi in class, and in the dedication she said, "Revenge is best served cold, you jerk." That's awesome. All right, the letter N, The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is not a young adult title. Sorry, my poster keeps waving all over because my arm's getting sore. This is one that is historical fiction written for adults, but it is so good. Everyone who's ever read this that I talked to just is gushing over it. And my my cousin Sammy Jo over the summer said, "You have to read this book." And so when I started my alphabet challenge, I grabbed this one and read it, and oh my heavens, can I just tell you, this is amazing. Two sisters in World War II in Germany, and they're trying to find a way to make good choices and fight against what they know is wrong in their own ways. One becomes very much a political activist, and then another one has a German soldier that has quartered in her house because they're allowed to do that, and she has to kind of be part of the resistance in her own way. All right, for the letter O, I read The Wizards of Once. This is Cressida Cowell's new novel, and it is super cute. It's about wizards and warriors, and they live in two kingdoms kind of, and there's this big forest between them, and they don't like each other, and we have one wizard and one warrior that kind of crash in the beginning of the book and end up on a quest together, and it's just a really fun adventure full of fun illustrations, like Cressida Cowell's How to Train Your Dragon books. Just very fun and lighthearted, good for middle grades probably. For the letter P, I have The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding. Now, this is Alexandra Bracken, and her descriptive writing is absolutely fantastic. The plot isn't as exciting as you might expect at first, because Prosper Redding gets inhabited by a demon. He gets possessed, and he wants to, of course, expel this demon. It's a part of a family curse. I would suggest, if you want to know more about this book, look for Emma from Emma Books' review of this, because she gives a lot more detail, and frankly I just don't have time for this many details about each book. But it is very well worth reading, and beautiful writing, just not as plot driven as I'd want it to be. Alright, the letter Q. I read The School for Good and Evil, Quest for Glory. This is number 4 in the series, and this is getting into the Camelot years, where we see Tedros and Agatha, who have gone their separate ways from Sophie. We left her at the end of book 3. She was the dean of the School for Evil, and Tedros and Agatha have gone to return to Camelot and try to restore it to its former glory, because Tedros' father, Arthur, kind of left it in shambles. And I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil things that have shown up in other books, maybe if you haven't read them, and maybe I've already said too much. Anyway, if you're a fan of this series, definitely check out book number 4. Sorry. Poster malfunction. Anyway, good read. Alright, this one. For my letter R, I read Replica. And this is that book that everyone's been talking about, that you can read one side and then the other, or go back and forth as you read chapters. Very interesting premise for a story. We have people who are actually clones and scientific creations. And I can't tell you a whole lot without spoiling things, but I will say I was less excited about this book than I was at the beginning after I had read it. Still interesting, and I would probably sit down and read the sequel. I don't know if I would buy it, though, because I was a little bit let down by the first one. Maybe I just need to read more of the series to really get into it. Anyway, That was a replica. For the letter S, I read The Western Star by Craig Johnson. Now, if you don't know, this poster's going to kill me. If you don't know, I am from Wyoming, and so is Craig Johnson, and he writes the Longmire series, which has been made into a TV show, and sadly, we're on our last season coming out on Netflix. Dang you, Netflix, for canceling. But I have heard rumors from the man himself, from this guy, that there might be some TV movies being made about this because the cast is not ready to be done. And so some of the cast members actually went to the studio and said, "We want to do more Longmire. What can you do for us?" Anyway, in The Western Star, this is the newest book. Walt is telling us about a memory that he had of being on a train with all the other sheriffs from all the other counties in Wyoming back when he was new to the Absaroka County Sheriff's posse, and he was not the sheriff of Absaroka County at that time. Lucian still was, but Walt was a deputy at the time, and he got invited to go with all the other sheriffs, and they rode this train across the state of Wyoming in a weekend and had their yearly conference. And of course, something goes wrong. Dun, dun, dun. There's a murder. Interesting. As usual with Craig Johnson's books, the sense of humor is wonderful and their writing is beautiful. And if you haven't read a Walt Longmire mystery before, I highly recommend them. You can read them out of order. You don't have to necessarily go in exact order of the series. But if you're interested in looking into these books, I will try to remember to link down below, or you can just Google Longmire books and find pages and pages about them. All right, for the letter T, we have Turtles All the Way Down, which is John Green's brand new book, and I might cause a little bit of feathers to be ruffled with my opinion here, but I didn't love this book. The character was interesting. They suffer from anxiety, and they really worry about bacteria a lot, and so we hear a lot about that, and there's a little bit of a murder mystery in here, or like a disappearance mystery, I guess, as well as some friendships, relationships kind of things, but I wasn't as in love with this book as I have been with some of his other ones. Yeah. And you're certainly welcome to have your own opinion about that. I didn't love Turtles All the Way Down. Okay. This poster, I'll tell you what, it's going to get smacked here in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to switch sides. For the letter U, I read The Unbecoming of Mara Dyer. And yeah, I know, it's been out a while too, and I had never read it, and most people on BookTube know about this, so I'm not going to really say a whole lot about this other than I enjoyed it. I don't know if I want to read the whole entire series or the Noah Shaw one that come out, but it was a decent story. Don't shoot me if that's your favorite book. Again, safe space to express opinions about books here. All right, the letter V, I read Vendetta. This was an audiobook, and this is kind of Romeo and Juliet plus the Mafia. These two characters are not supposed to be friends or dating or whatever, but of course there is some attraction there, and there's some mixture of mafia, and I just better not say any more about that one. W, I read Worlds Collide, which is the latest in the Land of Stories series, and here we have characters from the real world and the characters from the fairy tale world colliding, and Alex and Connor have got to, as usual, fight to restore things to the right order. We do get a little bit of a fun bookend to this where we see Connor as a grown-up author, and he's written all these stories, and kind of see what happens to him later in life, and he has kids and that kind of stuff. Okay, for the letter X, I read Soldier X, which is a nonfiction book by Don Wolfson, or maybe it's fiction, I don't know, it read like a nonfiction book, about a German soldier, hold still poster, a German soldier during World War II, and what it was like for just a regular run-of-the-mill German soldier who didn't necessarily believe everything that the Nazis were spitting out, but he was part of the army, he signed up for the Hitler Youth, and how was that like for him? Alright, so let's see if I can move my hand here without spilling the poster over. Alright, so for the letter Y, I read York by Laura Ruby, and this was a really interesting, it seemed kind of steampunky in that the technology was different, even though it was what it was for the time, I don't know, but there was this building that these kids live in that is about to be torn down, but it's also connected to this really great treasure mystery of the city, and so they're trying to find out what it is, and you've got these kids working together to try to save the building where they all live because this is home for them and they don't want to lose their home. And so there's lots of running around over New York City, which is kind of fun, and yeah, fun adventure. Last but not least is the letter Z, and I listened to Zoo Break by Gordon Corman. Anything by Gordon Corman is great for middle grades, and he's super funny. And this was the second, is Zoo Break the first? No, it's the second book in the series. And we have, as the title suggests, a zoo break and some animals and kids on adventure and trying to help the animals. Not to mention one of the greatest lines in a book that I have read recently, which is the character's kind of in a pickle and he says to himself, "What would Johnny Depp do?" It's a great question to consider in life. All right, I have yammered on for plenty of time now, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. This was my first semester reading goal, Alphabet Soup Challenge, and I hope that you will be inspired to do a challenge, whether it's a year-long challenge or just challenge yourself for a month or whatever you'd like to do. Give yourself a reading challenge because they're super fun. And let me know in the comments below if you've done any great challenges because I am looking for a new one for second semester, so that would be January through May. If you've got a great idea for a reading challenge, don't say 50 States challenge because I did that last year and it kicked my butt. But anything else that you've got, please feel free to comment in the space below. As always, have a lovely day. Happy reading. Adios.